Good evening. Welcome to the Azeroth review. I'm not making up Warhammer models at all. And if you're new, say hello. Well, everyone say hello, so I actually know that you're there. But I knew I was going to do that. But more specifically, if you are new, what we do here is just talk about anything Warcraft related. I noticed there's been a little bit of news this week. Classic WoW. It's mostly about bug fixes, but they did say some things of interest. I wrote them down somewhere. And now I can't find them. Where is it? What was it? Oh, there we go. So, in terms of some... Because what they were... As well as some bug fixes they say they've sorted out, what was interesting is they were talking about how some of the things people were reporting as bugs actually weren't. So when they went back and checked, says no, that's how it was. I think there's one example they gave, and I can't remember. It was about warlocks, and people were saying, oh, you know, when your warlocks like summoning a new demon, the previous demon should stay there until the new one comes up. And they said, no, we checked, it doesn't. And I have to say, my vague recollection is that Blizzard, well, I know Blizzard are right, they've checked, they've said so, but my vague recollection was that it did disappear while you were still casting the summon for the new one. Because I seem to remember sometimes when I was trying to do that for a demon or a gimp or whatever I had, and sometimes you'd get your cast interrupted, but your demon's still gone. So, yeah, I think they were right on that one. But there were a couple like that. There were some other ones as well. They noted that, like, regen wasn't working properly and stuff like that. But they've also talked about the fact, of course, that some things are not worth sorting out. And I think that's, you know, the measure of it, isn't it? Classic WoW is not going to be as vanilla WoW was. Not just, of course, because it's not of its time anymore, but because it's a close fit. It's a close match. They never intended, when they destroyed all the stuff for Vanilla WoW, to ever have to bring it out again. I mean, why would you? When you brought out Burning Crusade, it was supposed to be an improvement on the original version. And when you brought out Wrath, that was supposed to be an improvement on that, and so on. Why would you ever think that someone would want to go all retro all of a sudden? Even though, that being said, people do that all the time in gaming, don't they? People are always going on that. Maybe people were comparing classic beta to private servers. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point there. They may well have been. And yeah, indeed, private servers are not necessarily a perfect copy either. That's entirely possible. Or it could just be dodgy recollections. I mean, it is difficult to remember certain things. Like, you know, there were things when I was playing the demo I'd forgotten. I thought, oh, yeah, I remember this. I remember this happening. And then maybe there are other things that I had false memories of. I don't know. But hello, everyone. Good evening. So, yeah. What else were they saying? Some differences aren't worth fixing, like differences in how the mail works. Nonetheless, we've fixed some fairly high priority issues. So critical strike rating, each item now improves your chance to get blah, blah, blah. Rogue energy wasn't working right, so they fixed that. Slow fall no longer applies to your jumps. Didn't even know that was happening. You again get pushed back when hit by ranged attacks and ones. Okay, I didn't know that wasn't happening either. But... So, I mean, they've obviously... none of there are really explaining about any philosophical changes. It's all about bug fixers getting it ready. And I suppose that's about right, because that should be the mode they're into if it's coming out, well, who knows when, but sometime this summer. Which is why... Wouldn't it... I don't know. Would it... I think it would be a good idea. Or would it? Are there downsides? Because I was thinking, a beta version of it should really be up there. Generate hype and all the rest of it. But I do sometimes wonder... God, my cable's getting all knotted up here. I do sometimes wonder if maybe they feel that generating hype for Classic WoW would take away from BFA, which is supposed to be the main focus, and it doesn't necessarily look good. If it looks like people are more excited for the game that was designed by their predecessors over a decade, well, probably started 2 decades ago. Bring over a Warhammer 40k hero to take over Horde leadership. What, like the new Abaddon that people keep going on about? I don't. Oh no, something's happened. A thing has happened. Oh no, it's all right. God, I thought something was going wrong there. Oh, I know what it is. Something's knocking my mouse. Hiya, Danny. So, well, I mean, someone's got to take over the Horde. Like, we keep going back with, this is the problem. This is why WoW at the moment is really annoying for me. Seem to keep going back over old ground. There has to be a leader of the Horde at the end of all this. They've all but said it's not Sylvanas or Saurfang. You know, it's fairly unambiguous to me when you describe those, when you say that a new Horde is emerging. And all right, granted, actually, I can't remember the exact wording, whether it was this expansion or maybe they meant towards the end. But a new Horde emerging, and Saurfang and Sylvanas represent the old Horde. So that's basically saying they're not in charge of it. You're still on the fence on Classic WoW. You might play it for fun and that's it. But everyone in my guild's going to leave when it comes out to play Classic. Yeah, I mean, a fair few of those may well actually genuinely prefer it. There are many people who do. But I'm going to be honest and suggest that it's a hype train that is finding it easy to pull ahead because BFA is, for many, disappointing, shall we say? Is that diplomatic terms? But I think many will come back. There were many aspects of it that were a pain in the arse, and by the standards of a modern game, I mean, let's face facts. Classic WoW, or Vanilla WoW, why are we calling it bloody Classic? Blizzard taking our vanilla word away. If it came out now, today, would be panned, wouldn't it? It'd be slated. So there are things, I mean, for me, it's mostly nostalgia. There are things about it that have been lost from the game that I miss, that I wish weren't lost from the game. But I don't consider it a better game on balance. And the problem is it'll take so, like, there's me thinking, oh, it'll be, you know, it'll be nice to go back, bit of nostalgia. But how much time is it worth investing for nostalgia? And it takes a long time to level up. In fact, I don't know. It could easily take longer to level up from 1 to 60 in Classic than it does to get from 1 to 120 in Live. And that's too bloody long. You know, and then at level cap, of course, there's so much time you want to put into it as well. I'm not going to put that much time into it. You know, I'm going to potter in it, but I don't want to do much. Anyway, still, Classic Vanilla has some fun to it. You're farming consumables for AQ40 on a private server where in BFA you did a few weeks of Mythic Plus, got some gear achievement and you're bored. But farming consumables is a bit boring, isn't it? I mean, it's all right. I mean, I suppose sometimes if a process is very mindless, you can just do it while you're just listening to music. I mean, I used to do that when I had gathering characters. Like, for example, miners. You just go round and round Ungoro Crater, don't you, round the edge. And sometimes you'd run into the middle round Fireplume Ridge to get some of the thorium there. But round and round the edge, avoiding the Devil Saws, depending on what sort of character you had. Mind you, even if you had a good character, you still avoided them because it was still hassle to kill them. It was quicker to avoid them than it was to kill them. I mean, that was one of my favourite places to farm stuff. Because you could also get the Guardian Stones off those elite golem things in there as well. They used to sell for a bit. Silithus and Ungoro Crater are my main farming places. Silithus on my Paladin and Ungoro Crater on my Mage, who was, for some reason, at the time a miner. Then I changed to being a miner on my... He was a miner herbalist to begin with. Then I changed... No, it was tailor herbalist. Then I changed the tailoring to mining, that's right. And then I changed it back to tailoring. And lost a couple of very rare patterns in the process. BOD has fun times at least, yeah. Well, if you're into raiding, yeah. Yeah, so I've heard. Except no one has yet been able to tell me that they've killed the gnome. So as far as I'm concerned, World First is still up for grabs. Because no one's managed to kill the gnome. They all keep letting it escape. Which I'm pretty sure counts as a wipe. Because if the boss disappears before it dies, that's a wipe, isn't it? In Vanilla, you did 40 to 50 farming Desolus. Oh, Desolus. I hated Desolus so much. I hated everything about Desolus as well. You know, it obviously got its name from Desolate, and it was. It was desperately dull. You also had a mind-numbing rep grind with the centaurs, which obviously I didn't carry on for a huge amount of time. It was also the most annoying place to do when on your rogue you had to do your lockpicking skill. Underwater. That was extra annoying. And it had the most tedious instance in it in God, it's so tedious, I've completely forgotten it now. Moradin. Which was not just tedious in itself, but it was tedious to get to because of all the caverns, and there were 2 different entrances. And, you know, before you got your thing, you might end up in the wrong one. Oh, it's just such... It was such an awful... Everything about the zone was bad. Everything. I could think of nothing good to say about it. And somehow they didn't even manage to improve it when they did the post-Cataclysm version of it. I had a go at that as Horde. That didn't actually seem to improve it at all. Your guild is going up against Heroic Gnome Boy tonight for the first time. Well, maybe you'll get the world first then. Maybe you'll actually kill him. Someone wants to nail his feet down. Stop him escaping. You liked Moradin nature resist runs. Oh, no. I didn't mind fire resist runs in not Molten Core, Blackrock Depths. I used to be alright with farming Blackrock Depths for all sorts of things. But Moradin was just tedious. Everything. Like where you have to go, you talk about nature resist here. Obviously there's that really good trinket that drops off the water elemental boss. But getting there with all the endlessly spawning maggots until you've sort of dealt with the thing that squirts them out. That was, I mean, how everything about it was tedious. Terribly dull. There was no fun for me in that instance at all. No fun at all. The end boss dropped a hit ring. I remember it dropped some decent plate legs. Don't remember much else. Desolus had 1 hot princess. Yes. No, it was awful. Do I have any screenshots from my villagers? No. I didn't take a huge number, but basically what happens is whenever I used to get computers, a new computer, which I used to do every 2 or 3 years, and still do technically. I don't think it's a while since I've gone more than 3 years without a new computer. And then what naturally you would do was to extract files off the previous one. This is before USB, like memory sticks and stuff. So you'd want to transfer the data across. But I could never be asked to do that. And then I'd keep the hard drives around. And then usually some years later, be like, oh yeah, and then I ain't got a connector to connect it because I'm now 2 desktops down and all of a sudden it doesn't fit or I don't have the connections for it or something like that. So no, there's also some videos. I didn't actually take any videos of stuff in vanilla, but there's videos of TBC raid kills that I don't have anymore, which is disappointing. What were the worst dungeons in vanilla? Well, obviously this is going to be down to interpretation. I would say Moradin. I loathed it. Stockades, just because it was pointless. Like now there's some bosses in it. There weren't at the time. There was like a rare that was sometimes there. It was there just for quests. There was no boss in it, really. Or not that drops like proper loot. No blue drops, shall we say. Now some people didn't like Sunken Temple, but I did. Yes, it was, again, you had that little bit of thing going around with the troll bosses. But the rest of it I liked. I liked Sunken Temple. So that some people didn't like that one though. I didn't like Razorfen Crawl, I have to say. But that being said, nor do I like the new version of that either. The shield from Gislot. Oh yeah, the swirly thing that looks a little bit like an engineer shield. Yeah, it never dropped for me. Never dropped for me. The first time I ever saw that drop was actually when I already had the red dragon scale protector from, you know, Fluffy we used to call it, but Velastris. So I never actually had a blue healing shield. What would the, so, you know, I'm trying to think. I mean, Wailing Caverns, I probably didn't do in vanilla because it's a Horde one. And by the time, you know, you're not naturally going to find your way there as an alliance player at that appropriate level. I suppose some people would have gone there for the deviate scale if they were leather workers or something. But that didn't apply to me. Well, you say the Humble Brag Veil Shield. The thing is, when I got it, I was in a guild that wasn't the top on the realm. In fact, it wasn't even, you know, it was in touching distance of them, but it was like 4th or something, maybe 5th even. And I remember some people in the second guild on the server at the time saying how annoying it was. Because like I had this thing and it's like they'd been killing it way longer than I had, and there's only one person in the guild actually had the shield. And there you go, I had it as well. It was a very nice shield. Looks very nice as well, which is even more important. Goes very well with the Judgment set. I would still use it now if I was to have a like in holy mode, which I don't use anymore. You was a crazy raider back then, Molten Core, Black One Leg, 40 then Zul'Gurub after hours. Well, I mean, I used to do it. There was quite a while when I was doing eight raids a week. Because there'd be one every single evening, plus I'd do a Zul'Gurub run on Sunday afternoons. To get rep for people who didn't have the rep for their shoulder enchants. And as a bit of a sweetener, what I would do is once we were no longer doing them as official guild runs, I used to just run them. What I used to do is divvy up the bijous and the coins at the end of it. You could sell them for 100 gold. Each person would get 100 golds worth of stuff. So it's worth it. Sunday afternoon, nice little run through Zul'Gurub. Maybe you'd get a mount. Usually you didn't. In fact, I don't think it ever dropped whenever I was the raid leader. I was terrible at it. I've super glued something to my bloody desk now. And yeah, you get, I mean, 100 gold then. That was, wow. You didn't have to do any farming for consumables, should we put it that way, if you were doing my Zul'Gurub runs. You just bought what you needed. Because that was a lot of gold. Unless you were tight and wanted to farm your own stuff anyway, or just had loads of times. You lost the Zul'Gurub Tiber to a gnome. See, that never would have happened had I been the raid leader. There was no way I'd have passed it to a gnome. I mean, I don't know what 100 gold in terms of inflation today would be, but all I would say is it was plenty for your raid consumables. You know, plenty. And your repairs and all the rest of it. Easy enough. Just trying to think if there are any other dungeons. Let's have a think of like... I think I quite liked most of the dungeons at level cap, though. I don't think there were any dungeons at level cap I didn't like. I mean, Moradin, all right, you did do that at level cap for nature resist gear, but I wouldn't call it that. I mean, Blackrock Depths, you would also say is probably not a level cap dungeon, but I considered it that because there was quite a lot of, because there was the tier gear from there for a start. World Quest rep caches 4,000 gold every pop. Oh, there's certainly been a lot of inflation now. You like Strathem, Undead, and Scholarmance was my favourite. In fact, it's my favourite dungeon ever. I was appalled. I cannot tell you how upset I was when I returned to the game and found that they'd basically destroyed it. Or were about to destroy it, wasn't it? Was it still there when I came back? I think it was still there when I came back, but it was about to go. I was... mortified. You're guessing I've heard about the Portal Gate scandal recently. Yes, I have a semi-related video, an actual WoW video going to be coming out. I need to record it later on today, but it'll probably come out probably tomorrow, I guess. I've now got to mix in WoW videos with Warhammer videos, and if we're going to be honest, it's going to be mostly Warhammer videos. But yeah, yes, I have. There's a lot of people upset. To be honest, I don't think it necessarily affects a massive number of people. That being said, what I would say with the portals is it's what they do every now and then. And usually what they do is for the benefit of players. It's just that sometimes if you're going to add ones, great. But if you're going to remove them, you've got to bear in mind you're pissing some players off and you've got to think to yourself, what's the payout? What's the benefit? You know, what is your trade-off for pissing off some of your players? And I don't see one. Oh, my best vanilla memory, hands down. Well, I have two memories associated with Nefarian. One of them's a good one of them's a proper facepalm. So the good one was just killing it. It was the first time, and in fact it's the only time since I have ever killed a raid boss where the raid did not expect to kill it that night. Every raid boss I've killed before and since, like major raid boss, either we expected to do it that night or we expected to do it earlier and we actually, from our own point of view, messed things up and we should have killed it earlier. So that was the first time it actually took us by surprise. We were going there thinking it was another progress night and we killed it. And that was amazing. But there's a sort of funny one associated with it. So obviously in vanilla you had 40 people in these raids. And some people were not very good, let's be honest. But that was okay because you could take them. They were socially nice to have around. And you didn't require them to be absolutely on form. You didn't want them completely messing things up. Like, you might not trust them on Velastris being the bomb, but generally speaking, you know, you wanted to take them along. So Nefarian had this ability where he would call out a class thing and he would do something. Like with Paladins, he would bop himself. But for Hunters, he broke their weapon. So what... Sardex. So what Hunters would have to do is they'd have to buy themselves a cheap vendor bought bow. And every time the Hunter call went out, they'd swap to that. He would break that bow. Then they could equip their proper bow again and carry on using that. Or gun or whatever it was they had. But there's this one guy who was a brother of one of the officers. And he was so hopeless. And he always forgot to switch his bow out. Even when we're calling it on TeamSpeak as well. We're saying, Hunters, swap your weapons. And we went over to him how to do it. He didn't have to search in his bags. We showed him how to put stuff on his hotbar. Everything. And this was on the actual kill. This is why it's ingrained in my memory. Towards the end of it, again, there's a Hunter call goes out. And and we say, Hunters, swap your weapons. And then that finishes. And all then we hear over TeamSpeak, because everyone's been really quiet and focused because we're doing really well. There's this voice that comes out saying, I've done it again. Oh, God almighty. Broke his bow. Oh, no. One Hunter you knew not only broke his bow, but also ran out of arrows on Nefarian, ended up meleeing the boss. Well, I mean, there's plenty of funny... To be fair, I don't want to be mean to Hunters, but they were the clowns of vanilla. I'll give you an example. Now, this was my friend, my personal friend, the one who got me into the game, but he didn't get into raiding until after me, and I got him into the guild. And there's a bit in Molten Core where you've killed Gar, the rock elemental boss, but then to get the next two bosses, they're both in a room and Baron Geddon cycles around it. So you need to pull them into the Gar room. But there's like trash and stuff first. So what you do is you get a Hunter to do Eyes of the Beast, I think it was called. Send your pet to pull a pack. Pull it back. Everyone would mug it. Then he'd send it back, pull another pack. And you'd keep doing that. And then once you'd killed enough trash and it was safe to pull Baron Geddon without any trash, you'd send the pet out, you'd pull Baron Geddon. And then you'd fight Baron Geddon in that room. And so my friend was doing this for the first time. And we're thinking to ourselves, bloody hell, this is taking a while here, but everyone's good. It's his first time, leave him alone. And then a pack starts to appear. We thought, all right, okay, good. And then we're moving. And then another pack comes. So, oh, he's brought two. All right, never mind. Okay, we're fine with this. And then another pack comes. We're thinking, hang on, what's going on here? And then Baron Geddon comes. And then another pack came. And yes, that was a good comedy wipe. But one of the most annoying things was, speaking of Gar, if I do an annoying, this was never funny. So you had it was like 8 rock elementals around him, which you wanted to banish as many as possible. So as many as you had warlocks, because they were elementals, you could banish them. And the rest of them, a hunter would distract them to a warrior to tank, and then you'd kill one at a time. You couldn't just AoE them down, because they used to do this boom thing when they died, which would not only knock you away, it would cause damage. So you wanted to do one at a time. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to have the raid leader tell each warlock and hunter in turn to assist them while they selected one. And because they were running around and kept changing the cycle, you had to be, and this was before you could mark mobs. Marking came in vanilla, but it wasn't there at the time. And so you had to get one, and you had to get another, and so on. And it was very difficult. And then every now and then, you get each like warlock and hunter to assist you to get their target. And then someone would stupidly click on their screen or something and get rid of their target. And then you'd go, I've lost my target. And you think, you're absolute arsehole. Because you just have to start it again. Because you wouldn't know which one theirs was again. It would be too difficult to work out. Absolutely annoying. Hi, son. Oh, sorry, I would have said that. So anyway, why am I making WoW videos on Warhammer channels? Well, I am still hanging on with my fingernails to World of Warcraft. I can't say where I'd be in a year's time with it, but at the moment I'm just clutching on. But anyway. So I've got plenty of really good memories about Vanilla. But I must, I don't want to try and let that colour my views about how great Vanilla was, when all it is really, it was new for me. MMOs were new for me. Of course, I've got a lot of great memories. Your best memory is killing the 4 horsemen. Yeah, we didn't do that. Such an uphill struggle with tanks and all. Exactly. I mean, we didn't do that. Our guild basically quit 2 months. As soon as they announced TBC, the date, everyone just sort of stopped raiding. Cowards. But anyway. You knew some PvP hunters who could easily 1v5 against a gear group. It was a high skill cap class in Vanilla. Lots of classes could be played. Obviously, Frost Mages were a piece of piss. Let's not pretend otherwise. But there were plenty of specs that could be played really well if you really got into it. When I describe them as a clown class, I don't describe it because of anything other than the fact they were the source of much hilarity. I mean, a classic, of course, was Lower Blackrock Spire. In fact, this got so bad that when you got to Lower Blackrock Spire, which you always used to circumvent the first bit of it and jump down to avoid a little bit of trash, if there was a hunter there with a pet out, you would instantly tell them to put their pet away. Because otherwise, you'd jump down, pet would go the long way round, pull a load of trash, and then all of a sudden you weren't avoiding that trash in the first place. But I think we only had a couple of engineers in our guild. And neither of them was a warrior, which was annoying because there was a pattern in Molten Core for an engineering shield, which looked cool. It's very much like the Moradin one. Looked a little bit fancy, but basically the same design, I think it was. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose another good time, really, I should be saying, is when was this been? I guess 2005 it must have been, or 2006, depending on your point of view. So it was New Year's Eve, and I'd long since at that point abandoned the notion of going out on New Year's Eve. I never used to enjoy it when I was much younger. It was always just a hassle. Everything was always packed. It's like, what the bloody hell is the point? So I decided, and there's a few of us decided in the game, just to go and have some fun in some dungeons. And we went into Scholarmance, and we had some fun in there, making a right arse of it as well, because we were very pissed. We were still getting drunk. But one thing that I will be mentioning in this video that I'm talking about is the fact, when it comes to portals and about travel, like I was discussing the fact that I agreed with Blizzard that flying detracts from the game. I didn't agree that they should take it away because the genie's out of the bottle. but I agreed that it was not a good thing to have put in the first place. And it occurred to me, I can remember a lot of anecdotes of like funny things happening on my way to an instance, whether it be a raid instance or a dungeon instance. I cannot remember any events getting to raids or dungeons since vanilla. Much more recently, because travel is almost without incident now. Whereas you had lots of incidents then, some of them bound to, are inevitably going to be funny now and then. Flying was your reward for getting to a certain level. Well, it used to be. It's not anymore. Got to wait 6 months now. Actually, I don't know when it's coming out this time. I can't remember. The equivalent of when it was in Legion, I guess, anyway. But your oldest and best memories were in 2010, playing as undead, something for a week solid during the spring break. You think you made it up to level 30. Yeah, well, that... I mean, it took me 21 game days to get to level 60. Now, that's not because it took that long. That's because it took me that long, because I spent most of my time in Ironforge trying to sell my enchants, because you couldn't put them on the auction house. There were no Vela then. So that I could fund further profession gains. Kata killed travelling to raids. Oh, Kata did. Well, they took that away though, didn't they? That you summon everyone to me thing. Yeah, I mean... I don't know what... Well, I know what they were thinking. They were... I mean, the reasoning, I guess, for it was because they need to come up with some perks for guilds, didn't they? Because they wanted to try and get away... You know, they wanted to make guilds mean something. The problem is, by putting all these perks in the guild, they basically created the cesspool guild, didn't they? But that was an unintended consequence. I didn't complain about their problems. But yeah, so they obviously wanted a load of rewards for being in the guild. I suppose that was one of them. But yeah, it wasn't good. It was not good. Because apart from anything else, it just encouraged laziness. You only needed one person to get to the raid, and everyone else would expect to summon. Just like people expect to summon from a warlock now if there's a warlock in the group. Whereas in vanilla, no. It's like, it was a hassle for a warlock to summon you because it required a soul shard, and that needed farming. And if you were going to waste one of their soul shards because you were too lazy, they would not be happy. In fact, they wouldn't do it, quite frankly. I would support them as raid leader as well. Never summoned anyone who was just too lazy to get there. The only people that were allowed to be summoned were officers who were collecting consumables from the guild. Well, no, we didn't have a guild bank then. Just be their bank, I suppose. When did we get guild banks? Was that TBC? I don't remember now. We had them in TBC, didn't we? You're guilty of using a guild as an extended vault. Keep saying with the portal business, if they want people to traverse the world to get somewhere, put something in the world maybe. See, I'm going to end up basically coming up with all the points I'm going to put in. If you're watching this, you might as well not even watch the video I'm putting out. But my argument is this. They invalidate the world with each expansion. So if you have a particular reason for wanting to go back into old zones, you don't really want the inconvenience of inefficient travel to do it. Because there's already only a small reason to go there in the first place. You're only making it worse by making it less convenient. It's not like portals are letting us get around the current zones, which is the only ones Blizzard care about. So this talk about the world and it making the world small if you've got too many portals is a rubbish, because the world right now is 6 zones plus a bit of Silithus. That's all it is. Because they completely, whenever a new expansion comes out, they invalidate all the old ones. Our battle across all of Azeroth convenient force less than fewer than 10 zones. Yes, I know. Way fewer, in fact. You'll probably watch it anyway. I mean, it won't be a long one. It's not intended to be a long one. It's just, there's no point in me doing long rambling ones anymore. I don't have enough to say on them, I don't think, these days. But yeah, I mean, for me, they either need to breathe life into the old zones, but I think that could be a big ask at the moment. And there's no point in just putting a load of world quests in. That's even if it's useful rewards. Don't do that. God, don't do that. So I just think if you're not going to breathe life into the zones, and it's been their policy for a long time not to encourage use of old zones, then why make travel in them inconvenient? Because it is no longer part of the world. Oh, you're counting the islands, are you? That's very generous of you. I wouldn't count, personally, I don't count instanced areas because they're instanced. That's like a dungeon, isn't it? Blizzard and Zos need to merge. Only way to make WoW grow out again. Or ESO rubbish. Don't do that. Legion did a good job of making the world relevant. I'm not sure if he's sarcastic there or not. I mean, it's not. The problem is it's not relevant now, though. It's if you've got no reason to go there in the next expansion, then it was fairly superficial even in the first place. Hi, Rebecca. You loved have guild world travel. See, I mean, I found it very useful. I'll tell you what I found it useful for. Whenever I've leveled characters, the first reason I got 2 accounts was so that I could have a top level character boost my other ones through dungeons. So I would level to level 15. Then as soon as dungeons became sensible, I wouldn't queue up with them. That meant interacting with people. Good God. No, I would drag I would boost basically my other characters. Now, have guild will travel meant that I could get my main character very quickly to the instance and then summon my boosting character or boosty character. So it was useful for me for that, but it was a total abuse. Obviously now I have to just try and ferry them around on a stone drake mount as best I can. Obviously it's easy with a mage, but I don't have a level cap mage anymore. It's a long time since I've been able to boost much with a mage, because the mage of course got portals as well as a stone drake mount. And of course they've got lots of nice AoE for going through dungeons really quickly. They are like the best thing to boost. The only thing they can't do is resurrect my character if I'm foolish enough to let it get killed. In regard to Legion, you're not even talking about class quests, throwing you around Kingdom Come, you mean pre-patch invasions. See, I was never a fan of those. Pre-patch invasions. Do I even remember what they are? Pre-patch invasions, what were they? I've obviously forgotten. I don't remember. You love Suramar. Oh, I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I was a fan of the fact that they had a zone that was purely for level cap. Because here's what I thought Blizzard were doing, which is now completely wrong. What I thought was, with scaling, the big advantage of scaling is that quests are no longer something you should see as being for leveling only. Because, I mean, I don't know where anyone else is like this. I'm sure many others were like this. What I used to do with expansions for the longest time, as soon as I got to level cap, if I had some quests that were part of a quest chain that I knew were needed for attunements, yeah, you kept them. But otherwise, you just deleted all your quests because there was no need for them. They only existed for experience. Then you got yourself into your dungeons and all the rest of it. But with scaling, that need no longer be the case. Like in Elder Scrolls Online, for example, I still go around questing. I don't do anything any different at level cap than I was when I was leveling. That's quite good. But in WoW, it's not like that. So I thought it was an attempt to say, no, questing now isn't just for leveling. Here, we've put an entire zone you can't even get to while you're leveling. It's full of quests. You can't even do them until you're level cap, as a way of trying to encourage that change in mindset. And then to my mind, they completely invalidated it with BFA, which, although you do have level cap quests, they're in leveling zones, albeit swapped over. I remember Legion invasions, but I don't know about pre-patch invasions. I remember the pre-expansion invasions. They were nice. It's a shame we didn't have those at the end of Legion. It was a nice way to get to quickly... See, I thought the Legion pre-expansion invasions were very, very good because it was a really good way to level up a character. And you should give a really good way to do that because, you know, at the end of the day, at the end, the last month of an expansion, you know what the classes are going to be like for the new expansion now. Some people will want to change their class. So to have a nice, fun, convenient way to let them level up quickly is a brilliant system. And I do not know why they abandoned it. I don't get it. Oh, you meant the pre-expansion ones, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was an excellent system for allowing people to change their class for the new expansion if they wanted to, without having to pay money. Why would they not do that at the end of every expansion? Have some way of allowing you to get a load of experience. Because they did have something in pre-BFA. I've now forgotten what it was. But I do also remember it didn't give very much experience. They didn't give a good way to quickly level a character up. It's just, I don't know whether it was thoughtless or petty. I don't know whether they just didn't think of it or whether they actively didn't like the way it worked in the pre-Legion one. TBC, they used to have max level questing, albeit gated by areas that you could only fly. Well, there were some... I mean, there were some quests attached to storylines and parts of attunements and stuff. I didn't do anything else. There was no need to. But I mean, yeah, there's always been some quests associated with level cap. But you still, the association with leveling with quests is that you do them, they're for leveling, and you just delete them when you've level capped. Whereas there should be no reason to not keep those self-same quests. Crap thing with the new portal room is that they remove them from the new dazar'alor, and yeah, that is annoying. So, I mean, that's going to be the point I'm going to make. You know, a blue poster said, oh, but doesn't it make the world smaller when you have these portals? I say, no, it's made the world smaller, you getting rid of these portals. Because at the moment, I would travel between, obviously, Zuldazar and Kulturas, the new zones, of course. But also, in terms of old zones, Orgrimmar and New Dalaran. Because New Dalaran has useful portals. But now, I won't need to go to New Dalaran. There'll be no point. So actually, they've removed part of the world that my character travels through. Or when I can be asked to go online. And I'm not, you know, obviously different people are going to be different with it. And it is subjective. But from my point of view, I'm thinking, you've actually reduced the size of the world for me. But, you know, there you go. But they do these things. And I'm not going to criticise what they've done as such. But other than to say, there's a lot of people not happy about it. And why do something that a lot of people are not happy about when there's no benefit to it? I mean, sometimes, like, you know, if you nerf or buff a class, sometimes you have to do that, even though you know it's going to upset some people, because you're doing it for the other people who at the moment are a bit behind that class. So there is, you know, when it comes to like class design, a trade-off there that you can understand, even if you don't agree with what they've done. But something like this, it doesn't benefit any players for them to do it, but it does annoy some players, which are customers. And in a situation where they've just lost a crap load of subscribers, to me, that sounds a bit silly. I don't know whether that is just me, though. But personally, it's not something... I mean, I'm not even playing it properly. But even if I were playing it, I don't think I'd be upset at this. Because if they're going to put them in Orgrimmar, well, that's great. That's fine. Yeah, don't talk to me about dailies. What do you think of the shape of Ultima Thule being like two pancakes put together rather than two spheres like shapes put together? I don't know. What? Let's have a look. Which one are you talking about? Who's put something to what? NASA? What? I mean, the way it was described to me, because I talked to not far from where I live. I mean, it's a bit of a drive, but it's not miles away. We've got the National Space Centre in the UK. Obviously, it's nothing like, you know, in America. But I sometimes go along there for professional development and talk to space scientists and engineers. And I was talking to the guy who was on the team that managed the solar panels on the... well, it was actually for the probe rather than the Rosetta itself. Shit, what was the name of the probe now? God, I can't even remember. Anyway, the way it was described for them, the way they described it is, the reason why the probe didn't land where it was supposed to land is because the topography had indicated to them it was like a blob, and then it ended up being like a potato it was supposed to be, and then it ended up being like a rubber duck. So that was how they described it. They described it as, because of the two masses, as looking like a rubber ducky. But I don't know which image. I don't know if they've done a new image. Let me have a look. Is it on the BBC News science section or something? Or are we talking about something else? Am I mixing it with something else? Anyway. Ian did say he was hoping... shall I stop you at hoping? Hoping isn't even planning, is it? But okay, I'll carry on. There would be a Legion type of pre-expansion for BFA as people loved it, but the Darkshore quest was pointless and did not offer the XP. No, it didn't. That is the problem. You say there was hoping there would be a Legion... What do you mean hope? He's the director. Shouldn't he have said, actually, there's really good benefits in this. It keeps people engaged. It's fun. It allows them to change their characters. Obviously, someone being able to play the class they want to play for a new expansion is a good retention factor. For the game director to say something like that, I just despair. I despair. I mean, if they'd have actually said, no, you know, we thought to ourselves, actually, it wasn't that good after all, I would just respectfully disagree. But if he's going to say he was hoping there would be something like that, I say, why were you hoping? You are in charge of the projects. Tell a team to make one. Well, it's too late now. But you should have said, this is what we're going to do now because we've got all these advantages. It's popular and it serves a good purpose that helps retention in the next expansion. I mean, you imagine how many people may have not fancied leveling up another class. They wanted to play another class, let's say. Let's say they wanted to play an enhancement shaman because, you know, they were really good at the start. And they went to the sub. I don't have a shaman. I don't really want to spend the time leveling one up, and I'm not paying the money to. And then let's say they start playing BFA on their character. Let's say one that wasn't very good at all. Let's say just tossing one out, a Demon Hunter. And they're playing this Demon Hunter. They go, but I really want to play an Enhancement Shaman. And I'm not enjoying it now. And then on top of everything else, they decide to quit the game. Whereas maybe if they'd have had a quicker way of leveling up an Enhancement Shaman, they'd have at least been happy with the class and been... and the rest of it. Obviously, reverse Demon Hunter and Enhancement Shaman there. I'm only being silly. But yeah, I don't know. It baffles me. It baffles me completely. Like, as a teacher, we had it again, not today, yesterday in a meeting. Our managers are always banging on to us about retention. What are you doing to retain students? Even the laziest students who do not deserve our extra time and help are... Oh, hang on. I'll tell you what, I'll click on the link and then I'll have to hide it because... Oh, I see. Right, that looks weird. Okay. I mean, well, as I say, the problem is when I was talking to this engineer, there was... with the asteroid, it was... what they thought it looks like from afar was not at all what it was like when they got there, which is why when the probe landed, it bounced. In fact, this engineer was telling me that when it landed, they had the photograph of it on the surface, and everyone was popping champagne, and they get the meet in the media centre, and everyone was taking photos. And he showed us a photo of him and his team putting on fake smiles because they were not as jubilant as everyone else because they were in charge of the power, and they saw basically the voltage was oscillating, which it does on the way down because it's spinning, but it was still doing it after it landed. And there's only one reason that that can happen, because it's bounced, and it could be bouncing back off into space, and they were just waiting to find. Luckily, it bounced back down again. Just didn't land where it was supposed to. Anyway, shouldn't be talking about science. It says, why would they add cool incentive to leveling when you can pay to boost? Yeah, but it seems better to make leveling as terrible as possible. Well, I mean, it obviously hasn't, because many people have decided it is not that fun to level after all. Thing with Ian, had asked the team to do it, and they said, oh, well, we'll have Darkshore with this quest. He signed off on it, and then when it came out, it was not what was expected. See, then he's not tracking things properly, is he? You know. His job is no longer design, it's overseeing design teams. He should be having meetings with them, not taking away from the time, but he should be being kept up to date. That is just, but you know, I've said this before. He does not know how to coordinate a team, not a large team anyway. And the World of Warcraft development team is a large team, so you know. But I already knew this anyway. It's just really, really disappointing. Wish we'd spend more money on science. Well, I mean, I do in the UK, because we get really good returns from it. You know, we for every penny the government spends on scientific research, we make more back. We're actually really good at it, and yet we don't invest in it. But anyway, stop making me talk about things that are not WoW. You know how easily I'm led astray. But yeah, I mean, this is another reason why, although I can find reasons to suppose that maybe the next expansion, Revenge of the Potato People, could be a little bit better, and that is based on the idea that BFA had all these technological changes with the, you know, item level squish and the stat squish, that potentially that detracted away from some other things, and that won't be the case in the next expansion. Unfortunately, because I just think Ian Hazzikostas as games director is inefficient. I do not think he can use his resources efficiently. So I just have no confidence that will be the case. In not defending Ian, I just find what was promised and what we get has been happening a lot of late. Yes, indeed. It has. And again, it's because they don't know. They're just too confident. They don't allow any sort of criticism. It's a bit like, and you get managers like this all over the place, who don't like people criticising something because they're being too negative. It's like, no, you criticise so that you can see where the pitfalls are and make your plan stronger. And when you've got a strong plan, it's much more likely to succeed. Whereas if you just stick your fingers in your ears and go, la, 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 then, you know, and you ignore the things that people say can go wrong, then they are much more likely to go wrong. And that's just what seems to be happening here. And they don't even seem to learn lessons. Even when, because he's not a stupid man, of course. You know, he knows what goes wrong. Sometimes he'll even admit to it. And yet we don't see an improvement. So although he recognises where things have gone wrong, he usually shows an awareness of what the solution needs to be. He doesn't show any awareness of how to apply the solution. with Kotick on the top. Below him is the you think you do, but you don't guy. Ian, a lawyer. Below them, WoW has no hope anymore. Well, I mean, I don't want to abandon all hope yet. But I'm not far off, I have to say. I'm not far off at all. If it weren't for the fact... I'll tell you what, I'll tell you something. If the story for BFA was just about the faction war, I think I would have actually given up every last vestige of hope with it. It's only because it's going to be old Godsey. You know, well, pretty much from nowish, really. That is keeping me in there. And, of course, I would wait to see what the next expansion is like, because I don't want to damn it before we've even seen what their plans for it are. Obviously, there's several phases of judging an expansion. The first phase is what they say about BlizzCon. Obviously, at BlizzCon, it's what they're aiming to deliver, not what they're actually going to deliver. But at least it gives you an idea. Then the open alpha comes out, so then you get to see what it's like from people that are in there. That gives you another little lead into it. And then over those coming months, you can sort of see the direction they're going in. Ian often mentions story-driven content, but when a story is broken up into many small pieces, told over many months, it's nothing like the cinema story-driven content it wanted to achieve. I mean, I would certainly say the story is not engaging, and I think you've hit the nail on the head because you just get a little tiny slice of it. It's much more really like the Broken Shore quest, only worse, isn't it? Where every week they did a thing, and most of the weeks it was fairly dull and boring and took you about 10 minutes. But they added one extra little bit. I mean, the best version I've ever seen of telling a story over time was the Isle of Thunder in Mists of Pandaria. That, to me, was a very good way of telling a story through a zone. Maybe there's hope this is just a down expansion. What, you mean like one expansion's good, one expansion's bad? No, I don't think that. I don't really see... I mean, you know... I don't see it. But, like I say, I don't want to say anything, obviously, about the next expansion when I don't even... Apart from knowing what it's called, of course. I don't even know anything about it. Hi, Danny. I am well, yes. Thank you. Am I any chance painting right now? No. I wouldn't inflict painting on you. I am assembling ghouls. I've done a bad thing. Like, when I was getting back into Warhammer, I was really good. Like, I found a local gaming club, and I joined the Facebook group, but I didn't actually go down there until I had 2,000 points army assembled and painted, fully painted. Unfortunately, when I did this and I went down there, I found out that no one else had a 2,000 point army. It unfortunately is not the buoyant scene I was hoping for, but you know, there you go. But I was still determined not to play any armies until I had one painted. So when I was doing my second army, I refused to take it along until it was painted. Unfortunately, I've started the slippery slope. A couple of weeks ago, I took an army that wasn't painted. I didn't have time. And now I'm going to have a game with another army, the one I'm assembling now, which of course is also not going to be painted. In fact, none of it will be painted for this one. I'll have abandoned all good sense here. I'm ashamed of myself. But anyway. The whole good and bad expansions. Kata was bad. Mop was good. Mop was my favourite expansion. I mean, you know, for me, I loved Mop. WoD bad, Legion good, now BFA bad. Yeah, I can see how people who will have those views will go with that. But there's differing reasons why Kata was bad, I would argue, because not everyone says it's bad. WoD was bad and BFA is bad. So for Kata being bad, I would argue that redesigning the 1 to 60 content took away from, and I don't care what Blizzard say about it, they say it didn't. Rubbish. That took away a lot of development time from what could have been there for the actual Cataclysm content. WoD went, because they were trying to do annual expansions. Not their idea. This is from above. So obviously it doesn't really work. You can't do annual expansion. And so they had to abandon a load of content because it was just unmanageable, basically. And they wanted to make sure Legion wasn't a disaster as well. So they abandoned WoD for Legion. So that's a different reason. And then BFA is wrong, I think, just because Ian Hazakostas, it's unfair sometimes just to blame one guy, but he is the guy at the top. He cannot coordinate his teams. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't team leaders of individual departments that are also potentially unsuited to leadership, but he is incapable of coordinating those teams. And we've seen example after example of how this is. How long have we been going for? We've been going for 1 hour. We are halfway through. You enjoy painting more than playing. So do half the buggers at the gaming club. That's the problem. Unfortunately, I hate the painting. I hated assembling yesterday as well because I had to do it with resin models. They were god awful. Absolutely awful. I can't show you an example. I'll put it away. But anyway. You like garrisons, but the rest was boring. That's because there wasn't a rest. All there was at level cap was garrisons. Actually, the raids were really good. But you get raids anyway. Too bad you can't play Warhammer Online somehow. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, no. Well, there are ways some people try and do it, but it's not really, I'm not into that. It looks very rubbish to me. But yeah, I miss Warhammer Online. I need to find that video. I do, although I've lost a lot of videos, I'm pretty sure I still have somewhere the video that I couldn't possibly play on this channel of when we had an Orc night. Absolutely hilarious. One problem they have with BFA is they thought everything would work as well as it did in Legion. Well, certainly a problem they had is they had too much confidence. They refused to accept criticism. They deflected it all. No, it's going to be fine. We know what we're doing. Totally high-handed, arrogant behaviour. And it's like I say before, if you will not accept criticism, your product will not be good. You have to accept it. I mean, if you accept it and then dismiss it in the end, okay, but at least listen to the bloody thing. And they wouldn't. BFA, Legion, WoD, all fine if you're a raider. Well, Tuma Sargeras, possibly less so if you're a rep paladin, what shall we say? If you were a rogue, then yes. Because you're always fine as a rogue. Or a mage, or a warlock. I don't play on private servers, you know. At the end of the day, they are nicking intellectual property. So I don't judge people too harshly that do if it's for a game that is no longer available legally. But I don't myself because it's, you know, it's someone else's property at the end of the day. Hold on, let's have a look. Oh, except that you have to grind higher levels of Azerite just because you raid harder content. Well, exactly, yeah. That is the problem. Having to do basic content as a raider to raid is ridiculous. It is like the most ridiculous idea ever. Carriage on Overlords. Ah, you see, well, I'm not taking those now. They're my backup. I'm taking Legions of Nagash. And although I described the Maggotkin as my backup, I'm not going to need the back. I am going to get the models done. I'm going to behave. And I've got 2 weeks off before the tournament. Only just before the tournament. So plenty of time. But I want to get it painted before then so I can get lots of practice games in. You did enjoy when a zone would change when you complete quests in Wrath of the Lich King. I'm not so sure. The problem then obviously it works better now. The problem then is if you were grouping with people, an MMO you're supposed to be able to group with people. So if you grouped with people in a different phase, then you weren't there with them anymore. That's the downside of dynamically changing zones. So I am much less keen on them for that reason. Or at least the way they were done in Wrath, shall we say. They also dropped the ball going all in on the Azerite armor, and since they dropped legendaries entirely, when Azerite fell flat, there wasn't really anything to prop it up. Well, I mean, the Azerite armor system is a bad system. That's another problem with it. Because you've got this system where, particularly if you're a min-maxer, particularly in raiding or high-end Mythic Plus dungeons, you need particular traits. The difference between getting your BIS traits and not is huge. But what if you don't? What if you don't get them, or you don't get them quickly enough? And that was the problem legendaries had, of course, as well. So you have that same problem now with Azerite. The only difference is when you get your Azerite gear, you don't get an orange sparkly thing going, well, congratulations, you've now got something that's going to occupy a bank slot. When you played miniatures, you used pieces of card. It would be much cheaper, yes. I have been spending a lot on it. A lot. It's quite outrageous. And I've got more to spend too. The other issue is the ridiculous amount of mats required for pots. 18 herbs per pot. Every pull is like 1,000 gold just from pots alone, yeah. Yes, I mean, I obviously haven't experienced that in BFA, but I have noticed that, you know, consumables are not as friendly as they used to be. Have Pally ever been in favour of the month patch raid, like how Shadow Priest are at the moment? Yeah, apparently I missed it. I missed the golden age. Apparently, in like ICC, maybe Ulduar as well, I don't know. But in Wrath, when I'd quit the game, they were really good. So yeah, I missed it. I mean, I've always managed to be competitive with my Ret Paladin. But it's a battle compared to some specs that's just get it easier. I mean, Rets are alright now. They're usually alright. Every now and then a raid tier pops up where they're not, like Tomb of Sargeras. But generally they're alright. They're just never brilliant. As soon as they remove the Azerite grind from Azerite armor and move it to the neck traits in 8.2, Azerite armor is just tier sets, except worse because they don't swap with spec. Exactly. That's the other problem. They recognise now. They didn't when they were testing. They wouldn't accept criticism of the Azerite armor. They now accept it, but they're having to do... They can't redesign the system from the ground up. So they keep making sticking plaster fixes, which actually is... Although it's making it better as a system, is making it make less and less sense. Because they should have had all these thoughts in the very early stages of development. And it's just the hubris of the fact that they will not consider that their ideas might not actually be as great as was in their head when they were dreaming it up. Hang on a minute. They aren't meant to be overpowered with all the utility they have. Yeah, but what utility? People keep saying that. Our utility disappeared ages ago. We ain't got any anymore. What would I say is a good... I don't look at numbers for me. It's now a while since I've even been aware. I don't know. Some people are close to 30,000 now, aren't they? Oh, on an individual fight, though, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously patchwork. I don't know. No idea. I couldn't even go along to a normal raid with my paladin and have any idea what to do. I don't even know the fights. Honestly, I mean, I thought I was going casual. I thought I was going casual at the end of Legion. What I imagined to be casual. It turns out there's quite a lot more casual you can get. And I am at it. I am now completely clueless when it comes to the specific raids. I couldn't even rattle off all the names of the bosses. Okay, oh, just get your 10 plus done each week. Then every 3 weeks you can roll for dice for an off-spec piece. Breaking the story into smaller pieces isn't itself bad, but the way they're doing it is uninteresting. Should have included more subplots instead of just the back and forth war campaign to mix things up. Yeah, I mean, there's different things they could do. If you look at other MMAs and how they do it, certainly. But for me, it's just the fact that a new patch comes out and you do your thing and it takes, what, half an hour to do the next bit of the campaign and then you're done. Right, that's it for another few months. Utility, maybe one boss out of its raid so you can do some shenanigans by Bop. Yeah, but Bop is almost never useful. Every now and then it is. Almost never. Because it's physical protection and almost all deadly damage is magical. I mean, in Legion, it was a heyday. I think there were like 3 or 4 fights where Bop was useful. It's amazing. In a whole expansion. Wow. I wonder if Blizzard management go looking for YouTube videos to get our opinions. No, of course not. They don't even accept opinions when it's provided to them in the format that they like. The very idea that these people who just stick their fingers in their ears to criticism would deliberately go looking for it? No, not a chance. Time to start the journey home. Final PhD woes. Oh. If you do 17, 18 every week, you can bring that down to 2 weeks instead of 3, yeah. Would you, though, if you were competing at that level, would you actually just chance it, or would you not just wait for it to be able to choose it, even though that's a much longer wait? I don't know. How's your luck? Pallies do not have hand of protection. They have blessing of protection, which is almost... And they do not have blessing of... No, when you say Pallies, right? Holy Paladins have blessing of sacrifice. We don't. Rets don't. And Holy Paladins, doesn't matter about them because they are always useful. You always take them. They don't need extra utility bits. It's Rets that need it. And as for... And stop saying hands. We don't get any hands anymore. But yeah, we don't get those things. You have to chance it if you ever do more than one spec and one... Oh, I see what you mean for getting off-spec gear. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's an absolutely shocking system for off-specs. Arguably not as bad as artifact weapons were. In fact, I'm sure quite definitely not as bad as artifact weapons were. But still, yeah, good dear, yeah. I mean, it's just a bad system. I have... no words to express my utter contempt for it, I have to say. Other than the fact that I'm not as contemptuous about it simply because it's doesn't affect me anymore. But I feel badly for those who it does. Because, yeah. What, 2 or 3 months depending on how high the key is if you want a specific piece. Yeah, it's a very long time. I think the idea is you can get one piece each patch, like, you know, half patch, let's say, something like that. Because obviously they can't just let you straight up choose, can they? They can't allow you to choose all 3 pieces. So it's a bit like saying, you know, you could probably choose one of them and then another one before the item level has to go up again. Per piece, per spec, yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, I said this. In fact, I remember there was a period when they first introduced them, it almost looked like they were listening and they were going to allow you to have a different profile for each spec. But it just turned out it was broken because what happened was, whenever you changed spec, or it did for me anyway, it reset the traits. So it was like you'd have to put your traits on again. Now, I knew it wasn't supposed to work like that because it would be a cheap way of just resetting your traits. But I did imagine maybe there is a separate profile for each spec, but obviously not. You're 4 or 5 weeks into the raid at the moment. You've got 4 415 Azerite pieces dropped, only one of which came from the raid, plus another 3 415 you had to make with engineering. Oh. Everything else bought from the vendor. Right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about all the looting wares anymore, other than how it was going to be. I mean, the forced personal loot as well obviously doesn't help in a situation like this. At least with the artifact weapons, you could just power up one, but this expects you have to hope for the right piece. Yeah, I was speaking specifically if you had 2 specs you had to maintain. Artifact weapons were worse than Azerite armor. But yeah, the problem now is, and this is what I was saying, Azerite armor, it's like the worst features of artifact weapons and legendaries. Legendaries in that you are reliant upon luck to get the ones you need, but it does matter because it makes a big difference. And artifact weapons because it is very, very off-spec friendly. You could never get shoulders to drop. Yeah, shoulders in Aldia there was only like 1 pair, wasn't there? At least for plate there was. There were a couple of helms and a couple of chests, but only 1 shoulders. Bit unfair. Just as a slight aside, even though it wasn't the same reason for me, it took me bloody ages for me to get any decent shoulders on my paladin. And now nothing's decent because I have stopped gearing up. I haven't done a Mythic Plus this year. In 2019, I haven't really done anything. At least in the new raid, there's Azerite job from everyone else. Well, yeah, like I say, they have improved. Every patch, they are improving the way at least the Azerite gear works. But the issue is that it's only because they've had to face up to reality since it launched. It would have been nice if they'd have done that earlier when we didn't have to have all this rigmarole. But, you know, there you are. In Aldia it was like half the raid only or something. Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to remember now. I mean, I don't know if it was the same for all types of armour as well, but for plate, there was... I mean, Mother definitely dropped something. I think most of the bosses dropped something, or at least more than half. Not that there are that many bosses. Yeah, they've known it was poor since Alpha Beta. Or, well, I say known, they have been reliably informed. I'm not talking about people who you could easily mistake for forum trolls. I mean, people who know what they're talking about. And that's what infuriates me more than anything else. I could understand it if some of the most expert theory crafters in the game were all saying different things. And then one of them happened to be right and they said, look, I told you this, you should have done what I said. But they could reasonably say, yeah, but you were all saying different things. They're not. On certain issues, they agree with each other. When the senior theory crafters of all different classes and specs agree on something, they really should be paying attention to that. And to not is baffling. While it's good that they're making improvements in the Azerite system, going to be a shame when, if they actually get it to be nice and actually a fun place, just to scrap it. Do you know what that... I don't think they'll ever get it into a nice place because I just think fundamentally it's a bad system. Because of this fact that you are reliant upon luck to get the traits you need, they are not remotely balanced. And also you've got this ridiculous system of having to do... If you are a Mythic Raider or a high-end, Mythic Plus Dungeoneer, you have got to do a load of what is, for you, time-consuming but basic gameplay to power it up. But the idea that this isn't even a system... I mean, I'm not saying they won't revamp it and use something like it in the next expansion, but I bet they don't. Because, do you know what? Blizzard have already been starting to say already that tier gear may make a return in the next expansion. So if tier gear may make a return in the next expansion, that sort of suggests, because obviously it's totally incompatible with Azerite gear, that they're not planning on having Azerite armour. You would have thought that Blizzard had learnt their lesson with lock into spec with the artifact weapons. Yeah, but their idea is not completely rethinking something. It's let's ease up on the reins a little bit. But it's still if your horse is still going in the wrong direction, easing up on the reins a little bit just stops you getting to the wrong place more quickly. Sure, but you're still going the wrong direction. You need to change direction. They don't get that. Anyway. Now they go, okay, we'll put the power into the neck instead, so it's not locked per spec. I mean, the items are still locked. Yes, they are. I mean, at least that is better, though, because with the changes they initially started making to Azerite armor, it made the neck less relevant. But the problem is the neck is supposed to be the powerful thing. This is supposed to be the gift from Azeroth. Although, incidentally, I've got ideas about that. But, you know, so going back to the neck, which is supposed to be the important thing, from a lore point of view is better. But yeah, the system itself, it doesn't... I mean, it's an improvement. I think it's an improvement. I just don't think... It's just never going to be a good system. It's just got too many things fundamentally wrong with it. You could move Azerite armor to trinkets and neck. Well, they could just have one artifact, couldn't they? Like the neck. It could be like the artifact weapons, but as a neck or something else, a ring or whatever, that has the same sort of talent, pseudo talent system as the artifact weapon, but changes based on spec. Not a separate one and a separate route for each spec. They need to abandon that. That's just awful. And I cannot understand senior people who have themselves been raiders or are still raiders do not understand that. I don't get where they're coming from at all. It's almost like they worry that they don't want to do things that are convenient for raiders because then maybe they'll forget about the majority of casual players. But it's not like the making it more difficult for raiders is making it better for casual players. They're just making things unnecessarily in fact, something like that is worse for casual players, of course. Did Law say that Legion was alt-friendly? Yeah. Yeah, he did. I think he even described it as the most alt-friendly expansion. And that was at the start. And it is, by definition, and that's an objective, factually incorrect. Because in Legion, at any point in Legion, you had to do all the same stuff on alts that you've had to do in previous expansions. And it had to do artifact power grinding as well. So there's no way you can say alt-friendly. Crucible of Storms, the raid, yeah, it's coming out in April. There was a date, I've forgotten it now. April something. Forgotten it. Where is it? Bugger. Can't remember. Same tier as the current raid. So, yeah, because it's just a 2-boss raid, isn't it? It was always intended for that. The next progression raid is the Lady Vash raid. I can't remember. Has it got a name? I think it's got a name and I can't remember what it is. And so that's the next one, the next major one. This next one was always intended as like a 2-boss little thing, just to spread it out. Spread it out a little bit. Law said makes sense, makes sense. Oh yeah, he always says that. That's right in the middle on the law bingo, isn't it? Last 2 times they ended up by changing the gear to be a bit higher anyway. Yeah, I guess they did. I mean, I don't think it needs... The problem is, of course, again, this is somewhere where I find it difficult to criticise Blizzard. Because if I say, oh, it's a new raid, it should at least have slightly higher item level. And then what's going to happen at the end of the expansion? I'm going to be complaining about the massive inflation in item level from your starting point to your end point of your expansion. And how annoying that is for people who level up through that expansion, but later on, you know, after the expansion is no longer current. So I can't, on the one hand, complain about bloated item level gaps within an expansion, and at the same time say that every time a mini raid comes out, they should have more item level. I actually think the reverse. I think it should, well, not the reverse, because that would be worse item level. But I don't think it should have a higher item level. I think it should have, maybe they could do more interesting... It's only 2 bosses, for goodness sake. Maybe some more interesting trinkets, or allowing you a wider selection of the Azerite gear to more likely get the ones you want, that sort of thing. I don't think it needs higher item level. It's not something people are gearing up for as being super exciting. It's 2 bosses. Even if one of those bosses is of first version Hellier type horrendous, it's still 2 bosses at the end of the day. Talking about current, at present, Mythic Uldir gear is only as good as Mythic 0 now. Is it? No, really? I'm totally out of the loop on this now. Seriously? That's ridiculous. No, you're joking me. You are actually joking me, aren't you? Tell me you're joking me. Could be same item level, but maybe some class spec specific pieces. We know we're not getting that. They've made it quite clear we're not getting that. They won't even do class specific cosmetic stuff. They're doing interesting items, and every item that drops from it has some kind of affix on it. Oh, there you go then. I mean, that's all right. I mean, whether it is all right or not, I suppose depends on the application. But that sounds fair enough to me. Mythic Naught is 370. I had no idea. So all I need to do is a few weedy. Oh my god, my gear's basically like Mythic plus 2 then. Oh, Mythic, yeah, Mythic Uldir 3. But still, oh no, what am I talking about? What is my gear? I can't remember. So Mythic Naught's 370, okay. So that's like Mythic Uldir Heroic then, isn't it? Still, it's not far off. It's not far off, is it? But there we go. I mean, that's why there's no point in me. Let's say I had an opportunity to go and do a Mythic Plus dungeon, but couldn't do it every week. There's no point, is there? Because I might as, you know, if I wanted, the gear I get from it will be superseded probably the next time I play by just doing a world quest. So yeah, I might as well just wait until the story gets more interesting and then go in and get a load of easy gear from questing. I don't know. Because that's the problem with doing catch-up. I mean, a certain amount of catch-up you want, but it's just... I mean, I was ashamed when I was just doing some... in the first few months when I was actually doing some Mythic Plus dungeons, I was ashamed at my item level. It was way higher than it should have been for the amount of effort I was putting into the game. It really was. It was terrible. And I don't think it does anything to encourage people to do harder parts of the game when you're giving them too much on a plate. It just makes it all seem a bit worthless. It's a bit like being given chocolates every day. Eventually you just grow tired of chocolates. It's like it's not special anymore. Once you have your gear over 380, your daily world quest zone for the zone gives you 385 gear. Oh, yeah. You're so far behind in WoW, it'll just not be worth returning. But you enjoy checking up on the videos. See, for me, I mean, returning. I'm not going to return into. I'm not now going to do anything in BFA other than just the solo stuff, really. And I'm saving some of that up, if I'm honest. I'll probably just do some in half terms, like in college holidays. It's not worth trying to fit it in the rest of it. Obviously, I'm keeping an eye on forums and conversations and how the story's going. And I am actually playing on the PTR. I'm doing PTR stuff, ironically. So, I'm trying to... And I suppose if you've got someone who spends more time on the PTR than they do on the regular game, it's a bit of an indication that they're hoping for better things in the future, isn't it? Do I think Blizzard saved all the good stuff for the second half of BFA? No, and if they did, they are complete idiots, because when an expansion comes out, you should lead with your strongest content. Because the thing is, if you don't lead with your strongest content, people will go, oh, this expansion isn't very good, and stop playing. If you lead with your strongest content, people are more likely to think it's good, carry on playing. And then if the next thing that comes out isn't quite as good, well, the first bit was really good. So they'll give you a bit of time to see if the next bit's really good. And you can probably keep a load of people carrying on like that for ages. So no, never save your best stuff till later. Always deliver your best stuff as soon as you can. And that should be the start of an expansion. So I don't believe they're going to do that. And I think they'd be mad. If that ends up being the case, then they have been foolish. Really doesn't take that long to catch back up. No, it doesn't. Yeah, with artifact knowledge and stuff like that as well. Yeah, I imagine it wouldn't at all. Which is why there's no motivation for me to do things now and then. Like, why would I go on every now and then just to keep up to date? Because I don't need to. I can just do it in one job lot later on. That's what I thought with Raf. I quit because the first raid was nothing correct. Yes, I am correct. And on that occasion, you're quite right. It was a lot better. But that was why it was foolish. Because I looked at it and went, this is a crap expansion. No, thank you very much. So they lost some money from me. So they shouldn't have done that. And it was just pure laziness. They couldn't be asked to come up with a raid. So they knackered Naxxramas as a shell of its former self. Supposedly caps at 50 now, and next patch you'll be able to unlock all your traits at least. But you think people are put off by the new raid only having 2 bosses and being +5? Well, oh, so it is slightly higher item level, is it? Okay. But everyone knew this was going to be the case. You know, it's just, I don't know why. It's like, would people rather they didn't have that raid at all? Because it's not a replacement raid. It's not like that raid was ever going to be 8 bosses or anything. It was always going to be that. It's not +5, okay. It was always going to be that. And the next proper raid is the Lady Vash raid, which again it was always going to be. So I think people should take these small raids for what they are, like Trial of Valor. I think they're a good thing. It's just not. I can understand from a progress raider thinking, oh, it's only 2 bosses, but you know, it's not everything has to be just for the high progress players. Continue the chocolate analogy. LFR was the box of chocolates which starts the demise of WoW, in your opinion. See, I don't know that I agree with that. I think it was a way of retaining players who would become... Put it this way, they had a choice. They either did LFR or they massively dumbed down the hardest mode content. Because people will complain about accessibility. Now, I would argue that of all the zones, of all the modes there are, it's normal that you don't need. Because you do normal in a pug, but you could do heroic in a pug. So for me, it's, and I've said this before, I think it's normal that is the superfluous one. It's just forcing, all you're doing is forcing heroic raiders to repeat the same bosses to get gear. And sometimes mythic raiders to do 2 versions on top of their mythic progress. Anyway, they could always change what the item level is. It doesn't really matter at this point. They can change things like that at the last minute even. It's just a dial to move around. You're still convinced the Battle for Azeroth isn't the faction by faction? No, I'm utterly convinced it's not. Absolutely. It doesn't even make sense grammatically for it to be that. It's just I don't want the old God story to be a slow burner. I want to get... As soon as we're going to Ny'alotha, well, sort of. Nazjatar. Is it? What's the name of the new raid? It's not actually Ny'alotha, is it? Or is it? Can't remember. But where the Lady Vash one is, I'm hoping that it's going to get much, much more exciting. Do I think it might be better to just start a new game or try to fix WoW? For Blizzard, I think there are definitely things they could fix, but it would require a massive change in their mindset. But at the same time, there's a lot of advantages to just doing a new game. Like, for example, you can make sure there's no bloody flying in it. So you can learn from your mistakes. The things that they wish they could remove and can't. You just want to log in and raid and do keys and not have to worry about farming stuff. Well, a lot of people do, yes. And I think they've lost a lot of players who used to do exactly that. Yeah. You're down like $1 million goal this expansion, or so am I. But that's because I spent at the beginning and I've not played it since, so I'm not really built back up. Alafara as a pally is a great thing, as trying to get into a raid is hard, even if you aren't gear the raid. In a guild, being a guild does help, but you change guild 3 times this expansion. Yes. See, the problem is as well with lower down guilds, they inevitably know less about the game, and they'll have perceptions, oh, Ret Pallies must be bad, because Ret Pallies are always bad, which is a nonsense. So that is the problem with joining a lower quality guild. The people there do not know very much about the game. It's just unfortunate. Would be nice if more AP dropped from keys. Would it though? If you're very much into doing your dungeons, you'll obviously think that. The problem is when it becomes an incentive for people to do Mythic Plus that wouldn't ordinarily want to do it, then it becomes a bad thing. I would mind less if there were different sources for artifact power and a weekly cap on how much you could get. That way you chose what content you wanted to do, but you weren't incentivized to do stuff you didn't. It might be a 2-part expansion. You can't rule it out, but I don't believe it is. Massive idea. Put WoW on... Oh, hello. Put WoW on LoW support. Move the team over to Overwatch under Jeff. Start pumping out new content like Crows for Overwatch. No, don't like Overwatch. Improving certain things involve putting the genie back in the bottle. You can't really do that without triggering a hard reset via a new game. No, indeed, that's the issue. Whereas you can do those things with a new game, like I say, with flying. And maybe other things. If you were raiding with a heroic only guild, I'd want to rip my hair. I'd want to rip their hair out. But I would. I mean, as I say, I used to get irritable sometimes with mythic raiders who didn't always seem to be taking it that seriously. The idea of trying to progress with a heroic raid guild, no. I would be extremely toxic, I think, is the only way of saying it. And that wouldn't be nice for anyone involved. So no, that was never going to happen. I was never going to do that. Oh, I see. Yes, you've got to use the US times mostly. There must be Australian guilds, though, that use Australian times, surely. Obviously, it's going to be much more limiting. Well, I would be toxic because I'd be calling them names. And I don't just mean the gnomes. I mean, I can well imagine that there are way more American guilds and therefore it's more difficult to find. It's a bit like trying to find late night guilds anywhere, isn't it? It is tricky because you're reducing the pool of available guilds. And sometimes it's tricky enough for certain players to find a guild anyway, depending on what they're playing and at what level. But at least, I mean, there are guilds. I mean, there are weekend guilds, for example, as well, where I don't know. What's the time difference between where you are? Because obviously, saying you're in Australia, that could be anywhere, couldn't it? What's the time difference between you and I don't know, Central Time, let's say. 55 Australian guilds at 6 out of 9 mythic or better. That's actually plus 10. Oh, right. Okay. Well, yeah. I suppose you could get up really early. If it was a weekend guild, I was thinking of, you know, would it be doable in a weekend guild if you presumably you don't work, assuming I should say that you don't work weekends. Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, I mean, there's various things that make it very difficult. Like if you play, in particular, Ret Paladin, and you've got very specific requirements for when you can raid, and, you know, when you sort of add on all these things, all of these are restrictions. You don't need very many restrictions before it, yes, it does become... Like, people always used to say to me, because I hated... Because years ago, I abandoned all pretense at trying to stay on a PvE realm and went to a PvP realm and then complained about World PvP. People saying, why aren't you going to PvE realm? I was well, because there aren't any, basically. The only decent Alliance PvE realm was... Bugger. Crap. Is it Sylvanas? No, not Sylvanas. I was on Sylvanas. Can't remember now. Holy crap, I can't even remember the name of things. I've been out of raiding so long, I can't... Silvermoon. Silvermoon. But what I used to say was, that would be that would be great. Every time I've been looking for a guild, there has never been an opening for Ret Paladin in any of those guilds. So I haven't done any raids. I've watched them, but I haven't done any raids at all. So at the end of the day, unless you're going for World Top 100 or anything, if you're a good player, guilds will want you. That's not actually true, unfortunately. First of all, people will still want to load up with what are going to be the most useful across the board. You will get guilds significantly lower than that will take poor players of strong classes. Now, I'm not saying they're always right to do so, but they will do so. The other thing you've got to bear in mind is the further down you go, the less able the leaders are. Generally speaking, I'm not saying all the time, there are still some very, very good officers, raid leaders in guilds much lower down. But by and large, you generally find they have got, they're much less good at analysis and realising the various strength of people in a raid setting. So you don't find that, you find actually the reverse, because although it's true to say that the lower down you get, the less realistic difference there is between certain specs when you're not having to min-max to quite the same degree, the amount to which perception plays a part in forming a raid team increases. And by perception, I mean incorrect perception. Massively. I didn't assume anyone's raid leading skills. I'm talking in general terms. But in general, you do find that as you go further down, people try and ape what Method did, basically. Beyond all reason. This is why it was mainly with DPS. You've been raking in top 3 on all fights on LFR. Now, do you know what I think about people who judge their performance based on damage logs? Finishing in a top position may mean you are very good, but it does not mean you're doing the fights correctly, because the people who come top are the ones who do not do the fights correctly. Cheese it and let everyone else do the mechanics. In fact, Asmongold did a video about this many years ago during Mists of Pandaria, when he was describing how you get, you know, how you make sure that you top the damage. And I think the line was, mechanics, these are not for you. Obviously, yes, in LFR there are fewer mechanics. Mechanics are usually a DPS loss. Sometimes they're not. I mean, I'm you know, although I am someone who insists on doing the mechanics and killing the boss, I am not averse. If I happen to be very good at something that just so happens to put me top of DPS as well, then I'm all for it. For example, on Megara in Throne of Thunder, every now and then there'd be a load of ads spawn. Now, I used to be the one who would AoE those down. That did my damage no harm at all. It just so happened that I was particularly suitable for it as a Ret Paladin. I was quite superb at it, in fact. And it did pretty much guarantee me at least top 3, not in the world, but, you know, in the raid, and very frequently top damage. But at the same time, people who are padding on stuff, I've got no time for that at all. And yeah, that's the other point actually, Angio. You know, if you've got, you might have people in LFR that are just being lazy. I'm not proud of this, but I have to say, for example, in Warlords of Draenor, when there was nothing to do but level loads of characters, I used to do 2 characters on my 2 accounts in LFR at the same time, but not together. They would be in different LFRs. I'd sign them up I'd queue them up differently. So what I would do is every 10 seconds, I would switch screen, do some damage so that I was showing up on the meters, go back to the other one. And if when I went back, my character happened to be dead, great, no problem at all. I'm not talking about with my main character. This was with Alts. Then that's fine. I'm dead. It's not my fault I'm dead. Then I could concentrate on the other one. I'd still keep checking back to make sure no one would try to res me or talk to me, because then it'd be like, oh, he's AFK. So, you know. So I'm not proud of it, but that's what I used to do. No reason to step into LFR at the moment. No super OP trinkets and no tier pieces. Yeah, but haven't you seen, you know, the 415 item level LFR pieces you can get? Or one person in 10,000 gets or something. Oh, is there a mount in LFR? Is there a mount in LFR? There's never been a mount in LFR before, has there? Have they started to incentivise LFR with a mount? With all the catch-up mechanics in the game, not even worth doing LFR to gear and out. I think you'd probably have to at least enjoy it, at least on an ironic level. Mechatalk drops a mount in LFR now, does he? Wow. Oh, from Jane, okay. But still, the idea that LFR drops a mount at all, that's interesting. Mistress had a mount back in TOS, but it wasn't in LFR though, was it? I didn't think it was LFR, was it? Was it in LFR? Okay. If LFR is 370 gear, then I suppose it's worth doing for an alt. At least if you want to like do something with that alt. I mean, you might as well. What's my item level nowadays? The same as it was before Christmas. I haven't done anything on, I don't even know. Hang on, go on then. Let's log on. Let's have a little look. It's like really low, honestly. You know, it's low. I have literally not done anything in 2019 because, as I say, once I wasn't doing Mythic Pluses anymore, there was no point in doing anything anymore. It'll be higher than 370. It'll be at least 375, or round about 375, I think it was. But let's see. I think I need to get some new headphones. I don't like these ones. Gone right off them. I might get some wireless headphones again at some point. So that right. Right, let's have a look. 375. But 377 in bags. But presumably that's with crap stuff. So there you go. Extremely low by today's standards. So yeah, it doesn't sound like I'd have to do very high item level Mythic Plus to get gear. See you later, Barry. We're nearly done here anyway. We've got 10 more minutes and then... let us see. I'm trying to find something actually. Corsair Void Pro Wireless. Let's have a look then. Go on then. Because it's the cable that's getting twisted round and around and it keeps knocking. The other thing is I keep knocking the volume control on it. So I keep thinking I've lost sound. I haven't lost sound. It's just messed about. Go on, let's have a look at this. I don't really have Corsair peripherals. Let's see here. Oh, hello. Oh, that one's got a cable on it. I must have put the wrong thing in. Oh, here we go. Not too expensive unless you're looking at something else. Let me have a look. What do you say? Corsair Void Pro Wireless. This says 100 quid. I mean, wireless ones are more expensive, granted. That is not what I call... Oh, I don't like the look of it, though. I don't know. The other thing is, I'll tell you the other thing. I don't know that there's any... I sometimes wonder if I should even get a headset because I've never used the microphone on this because ever since I started like doing the channel properly, which I recognise I've now moved away from it a little bit, but I'm still doing YouTube properly, I got my... In fact, actually, because I got my new webcam, I shifted my other webcam over there. I'll probably just show you it. Is it this one? No, that's my painting table. That can go away. Go away. Must be this one. Yeah. So that's the microphone. So I don't actually need a microphone on my headset because I've got this one. So anyway, sorry. Who's saying, oh, purple, oh, logs. Okay, yeah. Don't I think it's weird that Alliance has to fight their hero Jaina? Well, yeah, I was very skeptical about this whole Alliance and Horde specific bosses anyway. The way I imagined it would work is you would actually both fight the opposite faction boss, but it would have exactly the same mechanics and stuff like that. And even then I thought, but sometimes colours might affect it. But no, to actually fight the actual boss itself, yes, I find very weird. I'll have a look. I mean, I may just get normal headphones, you know, because I don't need the microphone attachment. So it could be argued, is there any real benefit in me getting gaming headset? You know, maybe just get better, just normal headphones. Warhammer question. Do I think it's possible to have a competitive Carriage and Overlord's army? I know it is, because with ships in as well, although not necessarily loads, because I've seen someone do in top 3 in a competitive tournament with them. You just don't see them very often. Alliance gets race swapped to Horde. Yes, but you're still Alliance players. you're just disguised, or seeing it through other people's eyes, or whatever the hell, it doesn't matter. You're still Alliance, and you should not be picking on Jaina. It's an outrage. I totally understand beating the gnome up. I get that. But you should not be trying to kill Jaina. It's not right. The thing is, though, and again, this is where perception is important. When I was a recruitment officer, if I was looking at someone that didn't have much, if any, mythic experience, but they had heroic logs, I'm not going to lie, it's a major downside. We probably wouldn't look at them if we had a load of mythic experienced applicants, or at least people that I could approach. But if you had to look at them, we would, if I'm going to be completely honest, expect orange. Even without cheesy mechanics, we would expect a mythic quality player in a heroic, in a guild group, to be able to do that on a consistent basis. Unless, of course, we knew obviously as a mythic raider at the time, I would have known the fights very well. Maybe there's the odd fight where certain key mechanics, even on heroic, would prevent you doing it, in which case I would check the logs to make sure you were doing it. But I'm also not going to lie, there are plenty of recruiters, even in decent guilds, that do not look at the logs. They will just look at that percentile. Some of them don't even know how to read logs. So there is a certain amount of that. But yeah, if you want to get stuff up to mythic, in heroic, even without cheesing it, you ought to be getting orange. You really ought to be getting orange. Unless, as I say, there's a specific job you're doing that makes that impossible. Just swapped back to the hunter last week and have only blues and purples on it for heroic. Most done below 390. Passes for item level are all 95 plus. Yeah, but passes for item level, I would pay zero attention to those. Passes in general, of course, can be cheesed. Passes for item level includes people on low item level who are just being boosted by guilds, by whether it's guilds that that are boosting you to be friendly with you because you're their mate or they're guildy, they're just boosting your alts for you, or paying customers. So I'd be a little bit dubious about item level based passes. They're even less reliable than ones in general. Did I log my paladin by accident? No, it was quite on purpose. Someone was asking what item level I was, and it's been that long, I couldn't remember. It's all right, it's sufficiently low now. Oh yeah, you shouldn't expect to. I mean, I'd say there is another annoying thing, just as a last little thing to discuss. I can understand, like, if you're a heroic raider and you reckon you're ready for mythic, first of all, you don't necessarily know that. I can understand the dilemma. On the one hand, you've got no right to expect to walk into an advanced mythic guild. And apart from anything else, you've got to remember, when they trial you, you have suddenly got to learn immediately, without that experience, 7 mythic bosses that they've already killed and that all of them have already progressed through. And they don't fancy you mucking it up and wiping them. As well as very quickly get on to learning the boss they're progressing on. So there is the fact that you've got no right to expect that. But on the other hand, there's also the fact that, let's say you join a guild that's on 2 out of whatever, 2 out of 9 is it, progress. They're not a good guild, if we're honest. I don't want to diss anyone who's 2 out of 9, but in the grand scheme of things, as a progress raiding guild, you ought to be way higher than that. And it's an indicator that either they're actually quite a casual guild and therefore not really progress orientated, or badly led, or maybe both. Can't get into a guild or do a raid run. You've got to do your time. You've got to join a guild that's desperate for people. And if you play a class or spec that is not in high demand, you have got to accept you've actually deliberately got to join a guild that's not very good. You've got to. You've got to earn your stripes, and you've got to get those logs up, and then apply for somewhere better. You've just got to accept, don't leapfrog every few weeks, because that doesn't look good. You've got to accept that you've got to spend a couple of months in a guild, earning your stripes, getting your skills up, and then progress to the next level up, and you've got to take it like that. That is how I would read it. But you've got to, you've got to do that. You can't think to yourself, I'm worth this level of guild, so that's the level of guild I should look for, because they won't see it that way. And also, you don't know that anyway until you try yourself out. You might be, but you've got to prove it. And it might be that you don't, and it's a good idea just to learn in a guild that's going to be more forgiving, because there'll be people dafter than you in it. So that's the way I would look at it. So we'll end it there. Thank you very much for coming on, everyone. We'll be back on again next week, of course. That was actually rather good discussions we had today. So thanks for coming on again, as I said. And until next time, I will see you later.